Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our latest NHS podcast. My name is Alison Sweeting. I'm the Training Delivery Manager at CIF Education and Training Centre, and I am going to be the host for today. In a moment, I will do a brief introduction to our two speakers for today, and they will begin the session by telling a little bit about their journey in the NHS to get to their current positions. Then they will be having a discussion between themselves. At the end, we'll have the opportunity for any questions that you may have for them based on their discussion. Please put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. Just a reminder that this session is being recorded. So without any further ado, I will introduce both of our speakers, beginning with Hardev Verdi. He is the Group Chief Finance Officer at Barts Health NHS Trust in London. He qualified with CITFA in the year 2000 and has had a long career in the NHS. He will tell you a bit more about some of the things that he has done. And in discussion with him today is Mohammed Panjwani. He is Finance Business Partner at Milton Keynes Hospital, CITFA qualified, and both Mohammed and Hardev qualified with the NHS graduate scheme. So without further ado, I will mute myself and turn my camera off and hand over to Hardev and Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Alison, and hello everybody, and particularly warm welcome to Mohammed, who is going to talk a bit about his path to where he is. And to kick things off, I'll give you an insight of how I've ended up where I am today. So to kick off with, I trained on the NHS graduate training scheme after leaving university, spent a bit of time in the private sector. Was fortunate to get onto a graduate scheme where at the time you had no choice but to do CITFA exams and as the preferred provider. And I did wonder at that time whether it was the right choice or not. But given the fact we had no choice, we ploughed on, and I eventually finished my training in the West Midlands and then had further roles within various NHS organisations before making a move to London, where I took up a role in the Strategic Health Authority, which is a regulated body within the NHS. I then worked in further roles within London and gained my first sort of Director of Finance role probably about 15 years ago, and worked in London there and managed to work in various roles as a Director of Finance in the NHS across London. Some of which were most of which were in the commissioning land where we purchase healthcare. And I then made a switch to providing healthcare and moved into a mental health organisation. And then 2.5 years ago, made the switch to Barts, which is one of the largest NHS provider organisations in the country with an annual income of about £2 billion and has a nearly 20,000 strong workforce. Alongside that, I've also been very fortunate to be working with CITFA on a number of areas, particularly around workforce and ED&I as well. And the reason I mention that is because I have a strong focus on people and people development and on equality. To that extent, I'm very lucky to be the chair of the National Finance Academy across the NHS in all of England. So there we focus on providing recruitment, retention and development opportunities for all finance staff at every level to reflect the population we serve. So I'm sure we'll touch on that, but that's a history of where I've got to and some of the insights of where I am at the moment. But I'll hand over to Mo to talk about some of his highlights of his career.
Thank you, Hardev, and welcome everyone. So currently as Alison mentioned, I'm a finance business partner in Milton Keynes Hospital, so I oversee the core clinical division. So that is basically a division covering therapies, pathology, pharmacy, radiology, and quite a few other departments as well. So it's a really nice mixed bag, and no one day is the same as another. There's just lots of stuff going on, so it's really interesting, and like I said, quite a diverse mix. There is a little bit of challenge with in my current role with the fact that our activity is sort of driven by the main clinical division. So it's really important that I embed myself within my division. So my ears close to the ground. I'm aware of any upcoming changes and how that affects us. And just a bit about how I've got here. So back when I was looking at degrees to take up at university, accounting wasn't for me. I pretty much said to myself, I'll never be an accountant. Boy, was I wrong. So I think my understanding of accounting was mainly the side of accounting, which I personally don't find as interesting, but I know that everyone has their own sort of preferences with that. So I am really interested in financial management, and the first bit of actual work experience and NHS experience I had was when I was on a placement year at the Health Research Authority. So in that role, it was a very small organization, so I was able to get involved in loads of different areas in the finance team. So it was a really good foundation for me. After graduating, I had a couple of jobs here and there, which weren't really graduate jobs, and I was quite determined to get onto the NHS graduate scheme. It was the only graduate scheme I applied for, so I was unsuccessful in my first year, and then second year I applied. Thankfully, I got through and I got onto the scheme. So I had my first placement in Norfolk and Norwich University Hospital. That was quite an interesting time. However, because of the workload associated with the graduate scheme, doing exams, and also trying to get a good level of experience, there was a lot to juggle. So Norwich gave me a good foundation as well. But then when I moved to my current organisation, Milton Keynes, to do my second placement, that's really when I would say my career development kicked off. So I was able to fill in as an interim finance business partner for the Women's and Children's Division. I also went on secondment to the CCG, now Integrated Care System, just working on local maternity and the local maternity and neonatal system, which again was really interesting. It gave me a different perspective on how things work in the NHS. And then, yeah, so I finished all my exams last summer, and shortly thereafter I interviewed for this role and I was successful, thankfully. So yeah, that's just a bit of an overview of how I've come to where I am now.
Great. So clearly lots of experience that you've got under your belt now. But let's just rewind slightly and find a bit more about each other and what drives us as well. So as you decided to join the NHS and went for that graduate scheme opportunity, why is it that you chose to work in the NHS, which is clearly something around public sector versus sort of private sector? What led you to that choice?
So, like I said, I think everyone's got their own preferences and what drives them. So for me, it's sort of the idea that I'm contributing to something for the greater benefit of society. I've worked in other like in private sector as well, but it's I felt like I didn't really have the motivation and the drive whilst I was working there. But in my current role, I know that the decisions that I make will have an impact on patient care, in whatever way that happens. But I know that I'm actually making a contribution, and it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm making the best possible contribution. So I think for me, that's quite like probably the main driving factor. And then also just because when I was younger, I was a service user of the NHS, so it's also about, I want to say, giving back as well. So making sure that you know, making sure that we've in the NHS we're providing value for money, and also providing great patient care, and also the staff in the NHS, they're great, so resilient, and seeing how people pull together in difficult times like we've seen over the past couple of years is really inspiring. So I think the workforce at all levels, they are also very inspiring. So I know that, the majority of the people that I work with say the same things, but is that sort of the same thing for you, Hardev?
Yeah, I think you have that affinity based on a set of values, and when I was given the opportunity to join the graduate scheme, I was working in banking at the time, and I had an offer from a large bank, and it was a glorious offer. It was everything a boy of that age would really, and you could see that there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and I weighed that up against the trappings of working in the NHS. And what it came down to was, which values are you most aligned to, and where do you think you would add most value to? And yeah, I'd like to think it was more, it was based on my values judgment. I think actually, if you peel it away, there's probably something in there about which sector did I most feel more reflected me as a person, and could see myself working in, and that helped shape that decision of leaning more towards an area where I could see opportunities. I could see a career path. I could see development in the world of finance as well, and I could really make a difference, as you were saying as well. So it is all of that, but also the value of the public service, which I think really drew me more towards the NHS. So it seems like we got that value-based piece as a common factor there. And then as you work your way through the graduate scheme, how did SIPFA help shape your finance training and shape your outlook on what opportunities lie ahead for you in terms of finance, and what role has SIPFA played in your development?
So I think for me, because SIPFA is obviously tailor-made to the public sector, it just provided me with the tools to develop, and sort of alongside with the roles that I was doing on the graduate scheme, it was really nicely integrated between both SIPFA, the competencies that I had to achieve during the graduate scheme, and also what SIPFA needs to be qualified and for the portfolio and so on and so forth. So with that, the actual modules that I was studying, I found that through my work, I was able to actually get involved in that work. And it sort of, as I said, it was really a nice integrated approach. And I found myself working on business cases when I was doing modules about strategic sort of direction of an organization, and actually understanding how services can develop. So for me personally, I think SIPFA was great in that respect, but then also as SIPFA is covering many other public sector bodies, central government, local government, fortunately, I started my studying before the COVID pandemic, so we had face-to-face classroom sessions. So it was a really good networking opportunity to talk to people who come from different organizations, maybe central government or local government functions, just to see what else is out there, because as I mentioned before, it was sort of my ambition to work in the NHS, but it's not just limited to the NHS, it's public sector as a whole. It's anywhere where I can feel like I can make a difference. So having those networks being developed through SIPFA, and then also, yeah, it's just it's really good to see the constant communication coming out of SIPFA with, I think they've got their public finance magazine and different webinars such as today's webinar. So it's really helped me, definitely. How about yourself? Because obviously I've just recently qualified, and I'm just wondering, so SIP for 20 years on sort of thing, how has that looked?
Yeah, thanks for rubbing that in as well. Yeah, no, it's changed a lot. So, you know, I you know, back then, I think I came in with a perception that SIPFA was a stuffy old organisation that probably was stuck in its old ways and wouldn't move with the times. You know, I think a number of the accountancy bodies' perception back then would have been similar. I think it's evolved and developed, and it's moved much more progressively. I think SIPFA now is more relevant. I think it's reaching out more wider than just the public sector as well. So certainly, when I was studying, I was always told, well, that's you just confined to the public sector for life now. You know, it's going to be really hard. But I have a lot more dealing now with the private sector than I ever have, and I spend many times in sort of private sector boardrooms as well, and they are astounded at the complexities of the NHS and how you're meant to navigate your way through the world of NHS finance. And I think you have a broader range of skills that are applicable across all sectors. And I think you have a network across SIPFA that is supportive, and that does look at how we bring on students and support people coming in. And I think it is certainly dusting down those cobwebs of an image of an organisation that's stuck in its ways. I think this is, as I said, a lot more progressive now, and I can see that through SIPFA's leadership, through the way that the forums within SIPFA are set up that actually speak to people coming through and supporting them through their career journey as well. So I feel that SIPFA's come a long way in those 20 odd years. And one of the reasons I contribute a lot more to SIPFA now is because I feel it listens and it's responsive, and it can support people like yourself and me in our careers as well. So yeah, and I think that support of careers and people is really important. And you know, I've found that you need that support of people, whether it's mentors, coaches, a network, someone that when you're facing some of these career decisions or student type decisions of which way do you turn, you need someone to lean on and help you with that. So it'd be good to know how that's worked for you to get you where you are, and whether you've got that support around you through mentoring and coaching. And if you have, what does that look like? But if you haven't, why not? And would you need that going forward?
Yeah, I think so. For me personally, I haven't really taken on or approached anyone to be a formal mentor or coach for me. And that's just because I like to get a sort of a variety of opinions from everyone around me. So normally, like whenever people are saying that they're going to try and get someone to either mentor or coach them, they're looking for someone that they really respect or admire, or they've seen them, how they're working and how people either gravitate towards them, or how effectively they can get their work done. So for me, I've got quite a few people around me within my organization who are sort of that caliber, that I know that I can go to them and they'll be able to give me really good constructive feedback about how I've sort of been working. So this isn't just sort of my direct line manager, it's anyone within the finance function, the director of finance, deputy director of finance, and then also stepping away from that, moving into the operations of the hospital. So because I'm working with them on a day-to-day basis, they can see how I'm sort of progressing in my career, and they're always like really forthcoming with any feedback as well. So I think for me, I don't really have that formal mentor or coach as a singular person. It's sort of just sort of trying to get that support from my network, and then also from myself, just always constantly asking for feedback, because I think that's the only way that you can really grow. And it's like I said, from my perspective, I like to ask people who I work with on a day-to-day basis, whereas I know for some people a mentor is someone that you might meet with occasionally, maybe once a month, to sort of see how you're progressing. But on that day-to-day sort of frame, I want to see how I'm progressing from other people's perspective as well. But then again, also with SIPFA, I had really great lecturers especially when we were doing face-to-face. So when I was asking them about different work scenarios and just getting that feedback, it was really good to see. But like you said, in future, definitely as I want to progress to more senior roles, I think I will try and approach someone about being a formal mentor or coach, because I think that is something I'll need to get to the next stage. But how about yourself, Hardev? Did you ever have that support?
Yeah, so it's really interesting the way you described that. So when I worked and trained in the West Midlands, I was lucky enough to have good people who helped push doors open. And I found myself given opportunities at a very young age. And at one point, I think I was the youngest director of finance in the NHS, and that doesn't happen by chance. There's people who will help and support your career development. So I think there's something in there about having that support, whatever you call it, whether it's mentoring, coaching, informal support, and that is really important. And I again, going through the career, I actually had people asking to mentor me, which is very peculiar. But now I'm in the fortunate position to be able to mentor people, mentor lots of people. And what I've tried to do in the NHS is put more structure behind this. So in the NHS Finance Academy, under the banner of One NHS Finance, if you a little plug, but if you look on their website, we have a sponsorship program, which is slightly different to mentoring, because mentoring, as you said, you tend to go for specific advice on, help me out with this decision X, Y, and Z. Sponsorship is about, this is someone who carries the flag for you, is the one that will champion you as a person, because they will have all the contacts, the networks. They will do more than put that door slightly ajar. They will burst it open for you and give you those opportunities. And that sponsorship program is really, really a positive step forward for us in the NHS, because not everyone is lucky enough to have the voice to carry them about what they're looking for in terms of mentors and coaches and opportunities. But yet they are sometimes spotted by people that, how can you develop those individuals? At the moment, we have 200 sponsors and 200 sponsees across the country. So, and it's growing fast. So, it's proven to help people develop, and we're focusing on people from diverse backgrounds as well, because those tend to be people who are less forward in reaching out for mentoring and coaching support. But actually, it is a big step towards developing your own career and helping you shape what the future holds for you. So I'm a big supporter of that, and across the NHS, we're going to take active steps to make sure that's in place for many people. So that's the mentoring, and the reason I wanted to ask you about that was it helps shape your career. So the obvious question for me for you then is, so what's your ambition? Where is all this heading towards for yourself? And it'd be good to get your thoughts on how this career path is shaping up for you, and what that ultimate aim, that ambition of yours, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think that is a really interesting question. I mean, when I first joined the NHS graduate scheme, on the first day, we had a speaker who said to us, "You are the future leaders of the NHS." And that sort of maybe brought about a little bit of imposter syndrome when they said that, because it's just seeing when I'm working and I'm seeing directors of finance work, and I see, looking at where I was, say, at the beginning of my graduate scheme to where they are now, and you see, like you said yourself, you've progressed at a really rapid rate, and you were one of the youngest NHS finance directors at that time. So it's I think it, for me, when I first started on the graduate scheme, I wasn't really sure of how far I could go or how far I wanted to go. Not because I wanted to be comfortable, but I wanted to definitely be content, have a good work-life balance. And I think that's probably quite a key thing for me. But then I've also seen that as I've been progressing into more and more senior positions, it's sort of just fallen in a good way for me. So I've definitely always had that support. I've definitely had that work-life balance. So for me, I would like to get to a director of finance level. In what sort of timescale, I honestly couldn't say, because I definitely want to have good foundation at each level. So currently I'm a finance business partner, then moving up into more senior positions, sort of head of management accounts, head of financial management, and then deputy director and so on. So I definitely think that is my aim. It is just a question of, for me personally, how long I want to spend at each level. And I don't want to try and put a stop on my development, especially not now, because at each level, like I've said, I've been able to, from my perspective, contribute more into the NHS. And it is really seeing that contribution and seeing how I'm helping affect change. That sort of gives me the motivation. So yeah, definitely. But I mean, what about yourself? I mean, director of finance, is there any movement into chief exec, or do you feel like as a director of finance, there's probably more influence you could have potentially?
Yeah, so working in Barts, as I said, yeah, one of the largest in the country. It's hard to see beyond that in terms of the world of finance. But yeah, I think, you know, I'd like to think there's still more to come. And you know, I'm deeply proud of where I've got to. But I know that there's more. And yeah, you know, chief exec and other aspects are all on the cards. But you know, I'll just go back to your point about getting some of the balance right, the work-life balance. So I was certainly very clear over the last few years where I've gone into interviews and actually not mentioned the fact that I want to make sure I finish on time on certain days to pick my kids up. And now I have a conversation with the chief executive. This is how I work. You know, they take you on to deliver. You will deliver. I will also make sure I have time for my family as well. And that's how I work. And you know, I think any reasonable chief executive would see that and expect that, actually. So never, well, try to make sure you've got that balance confirmed in your head, that this is how you work and it suits you, and you know, that's what comes with you. And it's not up for compromise. So that's really, really important. I also think it sounds like I'm giving advice here, which I am trying to really, but you are the future of finance, you know, and therefore shape your career, make your career. Don't let it happen by chance. So, you know, you say, and I hear this a lot when people say I fall into roles, you know, oh, I fell into this, I'm now this. Well, I kind of didn't know, but this opportunity came along and I thought I'd go for it. I get that to some extent, but if you have an ambition to be a director of finance, you know, that's your ambition. try in everything you do every day to get that step closer to achieving that. And if you're not, asking yourself why is that happening? Why is that not happening? And what support do you need to make that happen? And again, going back to the One NHS Finance, through the Finance Academy, we've launched a number of programs, such as Going Beyond program, which is targeted for people at a certain banding, I think it's 8B and above, who want to become a finance director. And we've got other initiatives all the way from so junior level to even if you're a first-time CFO, and they're all there to support your career development. So if you have an ambition to be a CFO, you can see through the curriculum, and you can see through One NHS Finance all the programs that will support you in getting to that goal. So really, it's trying to put you in control of your career, which is sort of my strong steer, and create that momentum and have that network behind you as well. And CIPFA plays a big part in that network to support you in your career ambition. But as does your colleagues, your peers, and the people around you that will employ you as your next job and the one after that. So having that foresight is really important. So that's where I would emphasize. So my final point on career development is take control, shape it how you want. If you've got that ambition, really define it of what it means for you, and really focus in on how you're going to get there. If you're not clear about that ambition, talk to people, help people, help to talk, to have those conversations through mentors and through your networks to help develop that. So I think, Mohammed, I'm going to hand over to you for any final questions that you might have.
Yeah, so I think one question that I really wanted to ask you, and I know you've sort of covered this. So you said that you are on different sort of steering groups, and specifically regarding equality, diversity and inclusion. So I've just recently joined as the EDI ambassador for Milton Keynes Finance Hospital, Milton Keynes Hospital Finance Department. And I know that there's a lot of great work going on. I know it is sort of a journey, but how do you compare sort of the diversity that we see now in the NHS, more towards the senior level, that we had potentially, let's say, 10 years ago when you had your first director of finance role?
Yeah, so when I was in the West Midlands, I was talking to a regional chief exec at the West Midlands, and I was asking him for some careers advice. And his view was, there's not many of you around in terms of that people that look like you, and you'll find it difficult to progress in the West Midlands. You need to go to London to shape your career, which sounds really quite harsh, but it was good advice at that time. And as I progressed, I then, it became very clear that what we had in the NHS was lots of talking, lots of, things aren't where they should be, but we found that there was a lack of role models. And it'd be good to get your take on role models as well, actually. And so myself and a fellow CFO, we were asked to sort of campaign for this. And we did lots of listening to people, and we found some really harsh facts about the NHS senior leadership. So we found that when people above a certain grade, above 8A in NHS money, they hit that glass ceiling. And so no matter what your characteristic is, whether it's gender, race, disability, that's it. Yeah, you're going to find it more difficult, and the numbers and the data prove that. No question about that. But what we found was some of the emotional consequences behind it. So, experiences we were told were where prospective candidates were told that they wouldn't fit into the board. Women were told that they couldn't do the man's role. This is a man's role, they couldn't do it. We were told that because of your age, you're probably going to go off and start a family, so it's probably not the right time for you. And we were told that this board has people with certain letters after their name and come from certain schools, and therefore you might want to find other opportunities. So these are all sort of astounding remarks, but these were remarks that were very credible. And we showcased this across the finance community, and that's what helped us develop the NHS, One NHS Finance, and through there the NHS Finance Academy, because we're there now to change and improve the way we recruit, improve diversity, have more people that reflect the population we serve. And we did this for 2 years in London, and you can see the face of the CFOs in London changing and taking a big step towards that. But it's not the same across the country at the moment, and we're getting there. So if you look at all of our work and our initiatives around talent management, around developing the future leaders, you can see where this is heading. This is about creating the future leaders based on the population we serve and allowing that talent to really rise to the top. So that's what we're focused on, and that is happening. And I'm so happy to be part of that process and making that happen. But it needs people like yourself and everyone else who's listening on this to play a part in creating that finance community that we all want. So I'd encourage people to get involved in One NHS Finance, support your networks like SIPFA, and help create the face of finance going forward. So that's my bit, and as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. But it'd be good to get your take, Mo, as a final wrap up of your role models that you see in your field, and how does it feel, and do we have a bright future in finance in your capable hands?
I'd like to think so, but I think definitely for the role model front, I think, like I said before, it's sort of a mixed bag for me. I do like to see how many people operate, and just try and take, from my perspective, what the best sort of traits of that are, like whether it be their leadership style, or like how effective they are with their communication and stuff like that. But I mean, in terms of a personal role model, yeah, I wouldn't say that I've got someone that is close to me in proximity that I can look towards as sort of where I would like to be. It's sort of more spread across the country, and like you said, through different organizations like SIPFA, through One NHS Finance, and also getting involved in NHS Future Focus Finance. I hear about a lot of different people, lots of really inspiring people such as yourselves, and many different people across the country. But I think, like you said, within London, you're able to get a really diverse mix of people based on whatever characteristic they might have, and you're able to sort of I would say sort of see yourself in them and where you want to get to as well. But personally, within the organizations that I've worked at, I haven't really had that person that close to me, I would say, and it's more of a sort of exercise for me to look at how a person operates and trying to take the best out of that from them. But yeah, just in reference to your last question, I do hope that the NHS would be in good hands. But yeah,
I'm sure it is, and I think you're going to lead the way. I think you're identifying a space there that you can feel now. You can be that role model for people and inspire people as well. So I think the future is bright with leaders like yourself, and I hope you and others will step up and support the NHS going forward. because I think we need more of you, and we need people like you supporting those coming through as well. So I think we're out of time on the conversation, but it's been a pleasure, Mo, and I think we're handing back over to Alison.
Yes, thank you both so much. I thought that was a fascinating discussion, and I've got quite a few questions in the Q&A box. A couple of them are quite similar, so I'm going to combine one or two of them. Few people interested in how you can move into NHS finance from a career in another industry, whether that's private sector or another part of the public services like local government or central government. And I think both of you had experience in the private sector. Hard of you were talking about banking. So how easy is it to make the move? And have you any tips that you could share with people about how to make that move?
So I kick this one up. So, you know, we have to remember, if you take the NHS finance function, the chief finance officer for the NHS comes from the Treasury, from a civil servant background. So they're not a NHS person by background, really. And actually, if you look at the trend over the last couple of years, there's more people coming into senior roles from outside the NHS, from different sectors, because they do bring different thinking and they do bring something else to the table. What I'd be keen to understand is making sure you as an individual are the best individual you can be to make yourself right for that role. So it doesn't matter if you're private or public sector. It's about, you know, demonstrating that you're passionate about the role and that you're able to deliver on that. And certainly, I've told this story many times about one of my best appointments as a CFO was from a lady who had no experience whatsoever in the NHS, was working in banking. And she really was desperate to work in the NHS because of her values. And she wouldn't stop pestering me about having the opportunity to work in the NHS. And, you know, she performed brilliantly, and she loved every minute of working in the NHS. And I came in it with a bit of a pre-assumption that actually that she probably wouldn't get up to speed quick enough. But yeah, she was exceptional, and there's been many like her since as well. So I think it's certainly not a barrier. I think if you've got the skills and the ability, create your network, get a bit of an understanding of the nuances of the NHS, but focus on yourself of what you can add, and have that. That understanding of yourself, of what is it you bring to the table. So I always ask people, what makes you stand out from the next candidate? What is it? I can read all the CVs. I'm not really looking at your schooling. I'm really looking at what you add to the organization. So again, if I was interviewing Mo, for instance, I would say, what is your USP? What are you going to bring that's different? And if it is private sector, if it is a different approach, or what you've done to improve diversity, or you're a people development person, let that shine through and demonstrate what you can do to support yourself and give yourself every opportunity.
Thank you very much, Hardef. A really helpful answer. Mo, would you have anything you want to add to that before we move on to the next question?
Unfortunately, my connection dropped, so I'm unable to see the Q&A from the previous bit.
The question was about making the move from another sector, whether it's private sector into the NHS, or moving from another part of the public sector into NHS. Hardef's just given some really useful advice about, focus on you and what you can offer. And understand the nuances of the NHS, so you understand what it is that you're moving into, and presenting yourself as the best person you can be, that makes you the best person for that role. Is there anything that you would add to that before we move on?
No, I don't really want to repeat anything, but it definitely it's understanding why you want that role as well for me. So I know Hardev did cover that, but essentially, yeah. So if, as long as you want to make sure that your values are aligned to the organization that you're going into, making sure that you probably do a little bit of research yourself, understand the culture of the organization as well, because no, I'm not trying to say that this would be the case, but sometimes you hear about someone going into an organization and they think it's really great culture, whereas in the micro level, it's probably not that. That's not the case, and at a macro level, on the front of it, it's really great, but it's just making sure that you do your own sort of due diligence as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. And the next question, somebody is asking, what do you think is the minimum or optimal time to spend in a role before moving on or moving up a grade?
So I've, like I said, I'm sort of in the infancy, I would say, of my career. But I think personally, for me, it's I wouldn't want to put a certain timescale on it, because I think, like I said, when I was previously discussing it, that I want to get a good foundation at each level before I proceed onto the next stage. So it's sort of when I think I've done what I can do in this role, I've sort of saturated myself. And now for me to add any more value, I need to move to the next position. If I had to put a number, I would probably say that obviously it depends on your seniority and what sort of step you're taking. But from my perspective, probably between 18 months and 2 years, I would say.
Thank you, Mo. Hardev, would you want to add anything to that?
No, I think as long as you're being challenged, that's great. And learning something new every day is always beneficial. Yeah, challenge yourself. I think you're right, Mo, in terms of the more senior you get, the more time people look at your CV to say, how long have you spent at certain places? I think the key for me, have you made a difference in that organization? So you could spend 8 years there and not made a blind bit of difference, or you could spend 8 years there and change the whole shape and culture of an organization and turn it around. So again, it depends what you achieve. Set yourself some really strong goals and deliver on those, and the rest will follow.
Thank you. Next question is from a current student who's nearing the end of the graduate scheme, and they found a part of NHS finance they really enjoy, costing. I'm wondering what your view is of the future of costing in the NHS over the next 5, 10 or 30 years. Specifically, do you think the function will grow in importance because the teams are currently quite small? And also, do you think it would be beneficial to seek a further qualification in data analysis, for example, in using SQL, to assist moving up in a career in costing? So a fairly technical question there. So I don't know which of you wishes to pick this one up first.
So just to say, I was just this morning got approached by my national colleagues. So I chair the National Finance Academy, and there's somebody chairing the NHS National Innovation Forum. And she found out about some of the work we're doing in costing in BARTS, about creating a single costing system across several organizations. And it was deemed that this, what we're doing there is the future. But it absolutely is becoming more and more important. And the data analytics, the way you apply insight and link it to population health management, all of that helps to address health inequalities, and you can only do that with good costing information. We are finding more clinicians engaged with costing, so I definitely think it's a future that's bright. I couldn't probably give you a realistic forecast for 30 years, but certainly in the next 5 years, I would say costing is going to thrive. So it is a good option to be in. In terms of qualifications, it all depends on what your ambition is. So if you're a Mo and wanted to be a finance director, doing SQL training probably wouldn't fit into that. But if your ambition is to be the best costing person in the country and lead a costing function, then yeah, go for it.
I have a question here from Mo. Can you describe a typical day as a finance business partner, please?
Yeah, so I think I may have mentioned earlier that there isn't really 2 days that are the same, but it's sort of for me, because I think I've been quite successful in embedding myself in the service, which is a really, really great thing for me. But I sort of have probably about 20 different ad hoc calls a day from different operations managers trying to resolve something, because they know that if they come to me, I'll be able to help them or guide them through the process or something. So I think primarily once we take away all of the standard day-to-day accounting with month end and stuff and reporting, I think my main focus is sort of service developments, assisting operations teams with business cases, trying to make them robust and having them stand up to scrutiny, and just sort of guiding them through that process. And another really large part, especially now with how NHS finances are looking in the future, is around cost savings and efficiencies. So like the previous question, it was talking about costing and the function of costing in the finance team, and the importance of that is growing, because you can go into patient level data, service line reporting, and then having that engagement from the clinicians to actually bring about change. So I think from my side, I've been quite fortunate in the fact that I'm sort of able to step away from, let's say, the day-to-day accounting and stuff, and more focused on the strategic direction of the division that I'm currently supporting. So yeah, that's what I think I'd say for that.
So plenty of variety in the role then. I have a question for Hardev. Did you always want to be a CFO, and what makes the role of group CFO different?
Yeah, slightly obsessive about being a CFO. I did want to be a CFO, and the reason for that isn't about the status piece at all. It was about I felt I always had something to prove to myself, that I could achieve what everyone else can achieve. People will know about my sort of background, where I felt I was, well, and it was more psychological than anything else. I felt I needed to achieve more to succeed, to create that level playing field. So for me, if someone could become a CFO, then I thought, well, I need to do that then, and I need to be the best CFO. And as I went through the NHS, I was told I couldn't, when I moved from Birmingham to London, I couldn't maintain that seniority, but I did. And then I was told I couldn't move from commissioning to provider, but I did. And I was told I couldn't move from mental health to the largest NHS organisation in the country without never worked in acute, but I have. So it was always trying to prove myself, which is slightly worrying for a lot of people, I suspect, particularly my family. Yeah, it was just having that ambition and drive to do that. In terms of a group CFO, so a CFO could be a chief finance officer for a single hospital. The Barts Hospital comprises of 4 hospitals in East London. So I'm the group CFO, so I oversee all 4 hospitals.
Thank you very much. It's actually great to hear your ambition and determination. A question: when you finish the NHS grad scheme, what band should you be aiming for in finance? B7 or B8A? Slightly technical question there.
So I think for me, it was more because personally I don't really like to focus on bands. I like to focus on what the job entails. So you might see that in one organization or if you're comparing different organizations, a band 7 could have a extremely similar job description to a band 8A. And I think there was another question in the chat regarding what's the difference between a finance business partner and a finance manager. And I think that's sort of the same thing. Within different organizations, you might see a different title for a role, and essentially you're doing the same thing. And potentially the finance business partner is looking more to the strategic aims of the organization. For me personally, I knew what I wanted to get. So my role is a band 8A, and it was just as a I don't know, hard have said you don't want to say that you've fallen into a role, but fortunately a lot of doors were open to me, and I was able to undertake various different roles, which gave me a good grounding, because obviously with SIPFA you're gaining all the theoretical knowledge, but then in my work life I was able to actually put that into practice. So the band 8A role that was available was the role that aligned best with how I was developing at that time. So I think it is about making sure that you're challenging yourself to a good extent, but also having it aligned to what you've currently done during the graduate scheme, because not everyone's going to have the same opportunities, and there is going to be some difference there.
Great advice. Thank you so much. If people want to speak to either of you after the session, are you happy to take direct emails, or would you rather that we contacted you on their behalf? Clearly, people want to talk to you.
I'll put my work email in the chat in the Q&A box so people can see that.
Thank you. Does the NHS provide Tier 2 sponsorship for international candidates who want to apply for the graduate scheme? Hardev, I think, is that one more for you?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm not going to try to make it up. So you'd have to speak to the Leadership Academy, who would be the ones who run the graduate training scheme. What I would say is, if you look at One NHS Finance website, they provide a lot of support for people coming into the NHS and for those in the NHS. And I'll see if I can put their website details in the chat as well.
Thank you. That's the end of the questions, and we're pretty much coming up to the hour. Personally, I found this an absolutely fascinating discussion, and thank you to both Hardev and Mo for taking the time to make themselves available today, and for such thoughtful questions and answers. I think it's been hugely appreciated by all the attendees here today, and we've had plenty of good questions. And clearly a lot of interest on, from people thinking of moving into to NHS finance, and a good illustration of the attractions of NHS. So I think you both really sold it to people in terms of how you can make a difference in values and aligning yourself to the organisation. I think there's lots to explore in future podcasts as well. But in the meantime, thank you both very much indeed for your time. You can add your email addresses, Mo and Hardev, to the Q&A box if you'd like to, or we can make them available afterwards. But all it remains for me to do now is to thank everybody very much for attending, and particularly Hardev and Mo for this fascinating insight they've given into their careers. So thank you both very much.